In Ego is the Enemy, Ryan Holiday examines a problem that often becomes more dangerous as people become more talented, ambitious, and successful: the tendency to let self-importance distort judgment. His central argument is that ego can interfere with progress at every stage of a career, while pursuing success, after achieving it, and when confronting failure. For leaders, this matters because authority naturally reduces some of the forces that keep ego in check. As responsibility increases, people may receive less candid feedback, gain greater control over decisions, and become increasingly surrounded by people who defer to their judgment. Holiday's framework is therefore less about eliminating confidence than maintaining an accurate relationship with reality. Ambition, conviction, and self-belief can support achievement, but they become liabilities when protecting identity becomes more important than learning, performance, or results. Stay a student. One of the strongest defenses against ego is maintaining the mindset of a student. Expertise creates value, but it can also create the assumption that previous success has reduced the need to listen, question assumptions, or learn from people with less status. A student mindset treats competence as temporary rather than permanent. Markets evolve, organizations change, technologies advance, and leadership challenges become more complex, which means yesterday's expertise can become tomorrow's blind spot if it is not continuously updated. This is particularly important for executives because promotion can gradually separate leaders from the information they need most. Employees may become more cautious, bad news can be softened as it moves upward, and disagreement may decline even when the quality of leadership has not improved. Maintaining intellectual humility counteracts that distortion. Leaders who remain teachable actively seek expertise they do not possess, create room for disagreement, and separate the authority of their position from the accuracy of their ideas. The implication is not that leaders should become indecisive or surrender judgment. It is that strong judgment depends on continuously improving the quality of information entering the decision-making process. Replace recognition with purpose. Ego also changes the motivation behind ambition. A person may begin pursuing meaningful work but gradually become more concerned with titles, visibility, status, credit, or proving personal importance. Holiday's distinction between purpose and recognition helps explain why this becomes dangerous. Purpose directs attention toward the work and the outcome, while ego directs attention toward how the individual is perceived in relation to that outcome. This distinction can materially affect executive behavior. Leaders focused on recognition may resist delegating important work, compete with talented subordinates, defend projects associated with their reputation, or pursue visible initiatives while neglecting less glamorous work that creates greater organizational value. Purpose changes the decision criterion. Instead of protecting personal ownership, effective leaders can concentrate on what advances the mission, strengthens the organization, and produces the best result, even when someone else receives the credit. This makes humility operational rather than merely personal. A leader who does not need to be central to every success can distribute authority, develop stronger people, and build organizational capability that extends beyond individual presence. Let results speak louder than identity. Ego frequently appears before achievement as well as after it. Talking about ambitions, constructing an image of future success, and seeking recognition for what is being pursued can create psychological satisfaction before the difficult work has produced meaningful results. Holiday emphasizes the discipline of doing rather than performing the identity of someone who does. In business, this means separating aspiration from accomplishment and measuring progress through execution rather than visibility. Organizations experience a similar problem when language begins to substitute for evidence. A company can describe itself as innovative, customer-focused, accountable, or high-performing while its operating behavior demonstrates something very different. For leaders, the lesson is to make identity subordinate to results. Reputation should emerge from repeated behavior, and organizational values should be demonstrated through decisions, resource allocation, standards, and accountability rather than simply communicated as ideals. Success creates new ego risks. Achievement does not resolve the problem of ego, it often intensifies it. Success provides evidence that can be interpreted as proof that existing judgment, instincts, and methods are inherently superior. This creates a subtle leadership risk because confidence based on genuine achievement can gradually become overconfidence. A strategy that worked under one set of conditions can become a doctrine, while disagreement starts to feel less like useful information and more like resistance. Success also expands the consequences of poor judgment. An entrepreneur making decisions for a small company can recover from mistakes that become far more expensive when the same leader controls a larger organization, more capital, and hundreds of employees. The appropriate response is not to distrust success but to examine it accurately. Leaders should distinguish between skill, timing, team contribution, market conditions, and luck rather than absorbing every positive outcome into a flattering story about personal ability. That perspective also improves delegation and succession. Leaders who recognize how much success depends on systems and other people are more likely to build organizations capable of performing without constant personal intervention. Failure requires reality, not self-protection. Ego becomes equally destructive when circumstances deteriorate. Failure threatens identity, and that threat can produce denial, blame, defensiveness, resentment, or increasingly irrational attempts to prove that an earlier decision was correct. For executives, this can turn manageable problems into strategic failures. When personal credibility becomes attached to a decision, abandoning that decision may feel like admitting weakness. Holliday's framework encourages separating the event from the identity. A failed initiative is information about an initiative. It does not have to become a verdict on the leader who authorized it. That separation makes accountability more productive. Leaders can acknowledge mistakes, extract lessons, adjust strategy, and preserve organizational trust without wasting energy defending an image of infallibility. Business applications. Taken together, these ideas suggest that ego is not simply a personality issue. It is an organizational risk because executive ego influences information flow, talent development, strategic choices, culture, accountability, and the willingness of employees to challenge assumptions. An ego-resistant organization therefore needs more than humble individuals. It needs mechanisms that expose leaders to reality, meaningful performance measures, candid feedback, distributed expertise, clear accountability, and cultures where disagreement can occur without being interpreted as disloyalty. The strongest leaders can also make themselves less operationally indispensable. When authority can be delegated, talented people can grow, and organizational success does not depend on preserving the leader's centrality. Actionable takeaways. The enduring lesson of ego is the enemy is not that ambition or confidence should be suppressed. It is that both are most useful when disciplined by humility, evidence, continuous learning, and commitment to something larger than personal recognition. During periods of growth, remaining a student protects against premature certainty. During periods of success, sharing credit and questioning assumptions protects against entitlement and overconfidence. During failure, separating identity from outcomes makes adaptation easier. For leaders, ego becomes especially costly when preserving status begins influencing decisions that should be governed by reality. The practical discipline is to keep the mission more important than recognition, learning more important than appearing knowledgeable, and organizational performance more important than proving personal correctness. Authority will always create opportunities for ego to grow, which makes humility less a personality trait than a continuing leadership practice. Sustainable leadership depends not on thinking less of one's capabilities, but on seeing those capabilities, and their limitations, with enough accuracy to keep improving. If this summary provided useful perspective, like the video, subscribe to 10-Minute Leadership, and enable notifications. New summaries explore leadership, business, and personal development books designed to help busy professionals understand valuable ideas in less than 10 minutes. Holliday, Ryan. Ego is the Enemy. Portfolio, 2016.